Have you ever just wished you could feel better? Oh, sure, it would probably be great to lose a little weight or look good in your skinny jeans, but what if there was a way to just make your body feel good again? No more sore muscles or aches and pains, no more digestive issues, no more bloating or gas. And then what if I told you it could be possible to have all of that without even changing the way that you eat? Do I have your attention yet? Good, because I'm telling you right now, you are going to love today's podcast guest, Anna Rahe. She is a world renowned movement expert who specializes in fascia, a system in the body that is so incredibly important and yet somehow never really gets talked about. And what she has to share today is so interesting and so practical and so relevant to every single one of us. And I can't wait for you to dig into this fascinating interview. Welcome to the Feel Better, Live Free podcast brought to you by Thinlicious. I'm your host, Ruth Sukup, and here we'll talk about everything from the science of weight loss to practical tips for making your health a priority in the midst of a busy life. It's a little bit nerdy, a little bit funny, and a little bit revolutionary. So buckle up, friend, because it's about to get real. Hey there, and welcome to the Feel Better, Live Free podcast. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Ruth Sukup, and I'm the founder of Thinlicious and the Thin Adapted System, as well as the New York Times bestselling author of 7 books. And today we are going to be chatting with Anna Rahe, who is a fascia expert and the founder of GST Body, about how changing your approach to movement can completely transform your health. It is an absolutely fascinating topic and one we are clearly not talking about nearly enough. So, without further ado, I am so excited to be able to introduce you to today's interview guest, Anna Rahe. Anna, thank you so much for being here today. I'm so excited to talk to you.
I know.
So, why don't we start with just like hearing a little bit about you, who you are, what you do, how you got to be doing what you are now, because I really think like your job is pretty fascinating.
Thanks. Yeah. It's been a long journey. I tell people how long I've been doing this and they're like, you're not that old. I'm like, well, I started when I was 18 and that's kind of a rarity for someone to find their trajectory that young. But my name is Anna. I run a company that's dedicated to health and wellness, specifically through the lens of fascia, which is, a long story, but I'm going to make it short for you. At 18, I was living in San Francisco and I was living in a body that felt like it was 80. And that's not a hyperbole. I literally felt like achy, in so much pain all the time. I had multiple symptoms of like gastrointestinal issues. I was having respiratory problems. And I was trying to be a professional dancer at the time. I had been certified in 3 different Pilates, 2 different yogas. I had done, like from the outside, I looked extremely healthy, very vital. And I was so young, right? So what's wrong with me? And I would go to every professional and they were unable to give me any diagnosis. They didn't know. My MRIs came back fine. My CAT scans came back fine. My stool tests were all fine. And I'm like, but there is something definitely wrong with me. And some of the symptoms were like, when you work out really hard and you can't like take your shirt off of your head, or it's hard to like sit down in the toilet. I would feel like that no matter if I did a workout or not. It just was like this excruciating pain in my musculoskeletal system. And then I had digestive issues that were kind of like, they gave me a catch-all diagnosis of IBS, but I had like, inability to sleep. I'd have bubbles in my stomach. It kept me and made me kind of an insomniac. And, but I think the scariest symptom was just that I would like run through Golden Gate Park. I like to jog. I didn't do it like professionally or anything, but I was pretty good at it. I was a good runner.
Yeah.
And one day I would go up the hills and I'd feel like well-trained marathon runner. And 2 days later, I would do the exact same run and feel like a 10-pack a day smoker. And they would give me like inhalers and they're like, we don't understand what's going on. You don't have asthma. You don't have. So I'd had enough training in bodies and taken enough anatomy that I was like, this isn't muscular, even though it feels like I'm achy all the time. This isn't really like skeletal. I'm like, what else is there? And I had taken a workshop in my training at the Boulder Pilates Center on fascia from a rolfer. And the workshop was really on emotional imprinting into fascia and trauma and how you read the body. And so it wasn't even like a medicinal kind of a workshop, but I was like, I wonder if what I'm going through is fascia. And 25 years later, it turns out that yes, indeed, the reason that my symptoms were so varied and so vast is that it was a connective tissue system problem. And
Ah,
I worked for 25 years to find techniques, because what was happening also is that in the days when I was doing it in the early days, fascia was really the focus of manual therapies, and I would go and do rolfing or Heller work and do all of these things, but that my symptoms would always flare back up when I was active and doing my dance and doing my workouts. And I'm like, what's going on between these two, or what's the, underlying symptom? And what I was realizing is that a lot of the things that we're taught about movement and about doing how we use our bodies is actually damaging to the connective tissue system. It's almost like how we know that sun rays create sun cancer now because of the high frequency, UVA and UVB rays that come into your skin. And fascia has a very similar kind of response. Fascia is like the skin underneath your skin. It's all of this tissue that lays under the surface where the sun doesn't shine. But so there's these things that fascia hates, and that creates a lot of problems. And it's really significant to our health because fascia is not just in your musculoskeletal system. It's everywhere inside of you, and it wraps your organs, and it layers into your endocrine system. It affects your nervous system, all of these things that it creeps into. And so it's really a whole body system that has whole body implications on your health.
wow. So you've been dealing with this. So, but so were you able to fix it when you started looking into it? Like how long has it been fixed for you?
That's a great question. So I would say that it's not, I try to tell people that it was literally a 25-year journey.
Yeah.
And because there wasn't any information out there on this, there was not
Oh,
a lot of the things that I had been taught about therapeutics, and I had studied physical therapy techniques and applied kinesiology. And I was like desperate. I literally studied. I like to say everything. I'm sure there's ones I missed, but I studied everything, being like, why this? And I would go to this workshop and I get a flare up. And I'm like, why did this flare me up? Why did this not? And I had a Pilates studio in San Francisco also at the time. And so I started kind of like testing my techniques out on other people. And I'm like, oh, when they come in and they have nerve damage down their arms and I do this, it's not prescribed by PT. It's actually the opposite of what physical therapy wants you to do. They get better and they avoid their surgery. And things like
huh.
that came to the surface. And so I literally, how did I fix myself? I just did it for 25 years of trial and error. Does it take
Wow.
people that long to do it? No, but I think that because it wasn't available, and because my issues were, I think, genetic, and they were influenced by what I did. I was a dancer, and I was, worked out, and all these principles. It's almost like there's junk moves the way that there's junk food. And fascia's
Yeah.
number one influencer is load. It's called stress or load, mechanical load. And so it's literally like the movements that we do are junk food for your fascia. And it creates a huge problem in our entire physiology, all the way from cells to tissues to organs into the whole body system. And so things like how we treat core messes up more digestion and affects metabolism more than anything, hormone distribution, because fascia is integrated in all of those processes.
Into everything. Okay, this is like mind blowing right now because nobody talks about this, right?
No,
Like no one talks about this. I've like one time I remember getting a massage maybe 20 years ago.
yeah.
And the massage therapist was like, I'm going to do this thing where and she used that word fascia. She's like, I'm going to move your fascia around. And it was like the most amazing experience I've ever had getting a massage
I'm
before, right?
imagining.
Like I could like feel it and I felt so good. I've never felt so good. And then she stopped doing massages. I moved to a different state, right? Like never got to see her again. Never again. I have been getting massages for 20 years since. And I feel like every time I'm like, I hope they do that thing with your fascia. Every
Yeah.
time I said it to somebody, they've never mentioned it before. Like
Yeah,
they don't know what I'm talking about. Like,
right.
why, if this is such a huge thing? I mean, and I
Yeah,
talk a lot about health and wellness and
yes.
eating, right? And food and how all of our systems are connected and everything is so connected. And there's stuff like that is like pretty like basic knowledge that nobody's talking about in terms of food, right? And
Certainly.
hormones and how it's all connected. But this is like the same thing. Why are people not like, why is this not just common knowledge? Explain that to me.
Great question. I think, I mean, that's a big, big thing to chew off, but let me just say this. I feel like one of the reasons is that most of our, our approach to health and wellness comes from traditional medicine, and it never really cared about fascia. It would like cut open cadavers and like they'd see all this white stuff everywhere. Number one, fascia loses its primary consistency when you die. So by the time you open a cadaver, all that's left is the 30% fiber, not the 70% fluid, like water that's in there. And so all of a sudden you look inside a dead body and the fibers are all kind of dehydrated and they're everywhere, and they just would cut it away and they thought it was superfluous, like didn't have any meaning. So it
Right.
wasn't until like early 90s when the fascia actually 2000s, when I think the fascia congress started to be like, we need to actually study this stuff. Like it's everywhere, it's in your eyes, it's covering your brain, it's through your fingernails, it's literally everywhere. So what is it and why do we have it? And so I think that that perspective that it was insignificant kept it kind of hidden, and that affects even like east and west medicine practices, because it's just been, especially in the west, it just still comes from western medicine. And I think the
Yeah.
other reason that it's not well known is that we prize ourselves on specialization of medicine and being an expert in one thing. And so we diagnose, our basis for treatment is always diagnosis, which is taking an aperture and saying, here are all of these symptoms and let's narrow it, narrow it, narrow it. And we're going to get really specialized and we're going to only focus on this one thing. And that works for an aspect, but if you can't open the aperture back, then all of a sudden you don't see the integratedness of the human body. You're like, oh, your digestion is nothing related to your lungs. And I'm like,
It's
but
all
they are,
related.
because I'll have a flare up here and I'm having this, and they're totally related. And so I
Yes.
think that those two things kind of didn't fit our perspectives. I think the other thing is that we see the body and we see the world very concretely. In the West, we like angles and straight ends and like, rigid structures. We like things to be true and right and binary and things that can be controlled. And what life kind of shows you is that there's not so much structure, right? That there is still method and there's still like, order, but it's not structured. And so it's kind of interesting to look at how we approach our health and wellness through a very kind of myopic, narrow lens rather than expanding it. And I think that fascia does this for us because it's breaking all the rules. So fascia, like I said, is 30% fiber, 70% water, which means that
Mhm.
we actually need to change the science that we start treating the body under. Instead of it being from solid, we need to look at it from a fluid body. You're more like a water balloon being thrown through the air than you are a stick. And so when we start looking at movement as part of the health equation, you're like, oh, we're actually training our bodies to be more solid, hold a solid core, tone our muscles, bring everything and tighten and tighten. Well, that's what stress does. Stress tightens us. Stress
Right.
completely compresses us. So
Right.
there's this need to almost change the paradigm shift. And most, I think, people are starting to question that, right? Because our successes at treatment are not improving, right?
Mm.
We don't have like answers that are actually doing significant changes for people's health.
No, that's for sure. People are sicker and feel worse than ever
Right.
before.
Than ever before, than ever before.
So, so how can people use this, right? Like if somebody's listening right now and they're
Yeah.
thinking like, oh, there's this fascia that I didn't even know existed, right? That's all am I saying it right? The connective tissue in your body
Yeah.
that's connecting everything together. That's 70% water, 30% fiber.
Mhm.
What do you do with that information then? How does that transform the way you approach your health?
So probably anyone listening here can guarantee that they probably have fascial damage. Starting at 15, we start glycation processes, which is part of the oxidative stress that happens to the body as we age. Then we have sedentary lifestyles, and then the way we work out is constantly loading and loading and loading into our tissues. A load is just stress that's coming in and kind of weighing down the body. So almost everybody that I know has some fascial damage. No matter if you're over the age of 20, it's almost like most people have skin damage because in their 20s they were using, not using sunscreen, and then they at 40 they're like, oh my gosh, what do I do? So how do you like go in and heal? What does damaged fascia look like? Well, it's dehydrated. It looks kind of like ramen noodles, where all of these things are locked and layered and stiff and rigid. And if you think about it, I didn't get to give the whole spiel about what fascia is and what it does in the body, but the idea is that every body system relies on its consistency. It has to be fiber and mesh, and it has to have fluid, like almost like when you shake a sheet and then you lay it on the bed and the wave kind of travels through the sheet. Well, every time you move in life, energy is moving through your fascia, creating this kind of wave that needs to be able to move. And if you have dehydrated ramen type noodles, it's really restricted. And so what do we need? We need to be able to create individuation in your fibers, hydration in the tissues, and that is best done through this basic stirring in the body, movement, right? Movement is one of the most essential ingredients, but we don't really actually like qualify movement in our day and age. We're like, just
Yeah.
count your steps, have your watch count your steps. We like marginalize our sense of movement, and we do all this like great analysis of diet and nutrition and elements and what's creating inflammation and what's creating weight gain and what are the additives that we put in our food. And there's been a million ways that we've rearranged our orientation towards food, and we don't do it towards movement. We just think, oh, if I just can get my 45 minutes in and burn myself into the ground and burn my fat. And you're like, that's so unsophisticated. It's so unnuanced. And the
Yes.
body's like, you're actually aging me. You're pre-aging me by how you're using all of these systems that wear and tear on the body, that are like, you can actually, watch it happening erosively on your joints and in your tissues. So the answer to most people is that you have to learn how to move better. Okay. And fascia
Mhm.
has a very specific way that it wants you to move. The first is the fascia is like a syringe. You want to picture it like, those Chinese finger toys. So for your
Mhm.
listener, those like Chinese finger toys, when you were a kid, you'd put your fingers in and the fibers loosen, you pull the fingers out and they tighten. And this is a basic elemental movement of a syringe, which is hydraulics. And this is the movement that fascia is needing constantly. It's called a compression and a traction. And each movement in our anatomy is built upon this nucleus of movement, compression and traction. And you see it in our anthropological movement patterns. We would squat down by the fire, we would hang from the trees. We would squat by the fire and we'd hang through the trees. But in our modern life and with our chairs, we've taken it and we've flatlined our movement. It's just basically like there's no dynamics. And then we go into the gym and we just think tighten, tighten, hold, pull everything in and make it like, and we're like, this is mania. Anyway, so what we need to do is get this back, and this can happen really easily throughout your
Yeah.
day. And the other thing I was going to say, what fascia really loves is it loves to move in micro movements, micro dosing throughout your day. So it says, don't go to the gym. It's almost like, don't eat one big super calorie meal. That's like,
Right.
if someone's like, you get one meal a day and it has to be 2,500 calories, you'd be like, all right, believe it.
Yeah.
That's what we do to our movement. We're like, I got 45 minutes. Let me get all of my like things in. And you're like, this is not what the body wants. And fascia's like, do 30 seconds here, do a minute 50 here, do 3 minutes here, go back and do this. And so you start to look at life as a jungle gym. You have to
Mhm.
start rearranging your perspective of movement as something that needs to be layered and available in all of the things you do. So for your listeners, start looking around your life at fences, railings, car doors, handicap ramp, structures like jungle gyms, and you want to go over to a structure, put your hands on it, bend your knees and pull back like you're hanging off of the railing. That's called traction. And then you
Yeah.
want to bend your knees and you want to kind of go into a nice deep squat. And that's that accordion kind of like smush. And then you pull in you traction and you smush and you pull in you traction. And all of a sudden your body and your tissues start to glide. And it's literally like adding hot water to the ramen. Pretty soon those fibers will loosen, they'll start to open, your nerves will flow more freely, your blood flows, your hormones will move more effectively and efficiently. Your nervous system will actually have more open communication when those fibers are open. And so
Huh.
what you're looking for is very specific energy that's moving out of the body rather than loading energy into the body. We are a consuming culture and we do it in our movement. We just tighten, hold, make it rigid. And we need to learn that, like Fascia says, movement is metabolic. It's actually energy leaving the system rather than loading it in.
That is, it's so interesting and so different than basically everything that everybody talks about all the time. You're right. Like, go to the gym, tighten up, like, let's do all these things. And it almost reminds me, as you were talking, it reminds me of we had somebody on the podcast a few weeks ago who was talking about blue zones. And
Yeah.
are you familiar with blue zones, where
Yeah.
these areas where people live longer and
Longevity. Yeah. It's a great
they are
metaphor.
always moving and they're walking up hills and they're moving throughout the day. They're in the garden, probably squatting down, right? Like they're
That's right.
lifting things over their head. Like everything is very natural and we don't get that anymore. But for you to just like even the picture of turning everything you do into a jungle gym and grabbing the railing and grabbing this, like you don't think about that ever. Like, and I think
Ever.
about how much I just sit at my desk all day long and
Yeah.
where I could be standing up
You
and
could
going
literally even just
outside.
put
And
your hands, try this, put your hands on your desk and roll your chair back and try to pull yourself off your desk. Pull, 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 drop your chest, drop it to your chest, go, drop your chest forward,
like this,
push. Yep, go more. It's almost like you're doing this. You need this more than anything, right?
that
Pull,
is
pull,
crazy. Oh, like
right?
that.
Pull, 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 pull. Get as
For those of
much.
you who are listening, I'm doing that right now.
I'm pulling off, pulling off.
Pulling.
You could do that for 30 seconds. And do you know what that does? That loosens your lungs inside your rib cage. It
Yeah.
exfoliates your organs. Fascia is needing to, oopsie, fascia is needing to, I just lost you. There you
Oh, I
are.
see you.
Okay, good. I was like, that was my screen. So fascia needs to like have this flux. Think about like movement as like waves on a shoreline. There's this gorgeous like movement that pushes life through you. The vitality of fascia moves life through you. It's your primary energetic system. And if
Interesting.
you have it alive, it's like you know, when you go into a coral reef, if you've ever scuba dived and you watch the waves and all of these like seaweeds are dancing this way and the, sea anemones are popping out of their tubes and then they come back in. And this literally, your body is more tubes than sticks. And you need to have, and because your body's more water, what happens to water when it sits? It becomes static and it becomes septic and it creates disease. And they are tying unhealthy fascia to cancer, the metastasis of cancer. They're tying it with links to autoimmune deficiencies and diseases. And they're saying it's like the primary responder of inflammation in the body, and responder to your cortisol levels directly affects the contractile nature. And so you start looking and you're like, literally fascia is asking us to do a 180-degree turn, 100% opposite of what we've always been taught. And what's
Mhm.
exciting is it can either be scary or
Yeah.
it can be like, oh my gosh, for the people who really have body issues, it's almost like I've tried everything. I mean, most of the clients who come to me have been like, I've tried everything. I have tried everything. And I'm like, I see you. I see you because I did too. And it's nice. It's like this hope moment where you're like, there's something that you can do that's so different. And if you do something different, you'll get different results. It's just that we keep
Hmm.
being told to do the same thing over and over and over
Over
again,
and over again.
right?
Yeah.
Low back pain, better strengthen your core, make those abs tighter. And you're like, that's the number one cause of your low back pain, not to mention your constipation, not to mention your microbiome Crohn's disease, right? Like it's
Yes.
so I love talking about this stuff because I think that it's like so revolutionary to change your mind and give your body options, right? You're not stuck in this zone of like, this is all that matters. And they're saying that the number one, preventative anti-aging strategy is movement above diet, above herbs, above supplements. That if you move, but this is the point, movement, not all movement is good. Not all movement actually accesses fascia. I thought that it was really interesting to you that you've had massages since that girl, right? You
Mm-hmm.
told me about the girl who's like did the massage on you and she
Fascia
told
massage.
you fascia,
It's
and there was a
amazing.
difference between what she did and what
Mhm.
someone else did. Not all treatment of the body is the same. And you knew that. You haven't had a fascial massage since then, and
Nope.
you didn't feel the same things. So fascia has these requirements that are needed in order to be optimized. And it's kind of like this new frontier where it's like giving us opportunities to try different things and do different things and think differently. And all of a sudden, it's hopeful for the people like me that were like, I
Thank
can't,
you.
I can't live my life. I'm so tired. Why can't I lose my weight? Why can't I, get rid of my brain fog, right? In
Right.
menopause, perimenopausal and menopause stuff. It's like, this is, you know, so it should be included. My whole thing is if you haven't included it in your lens, you should look at it, right? That's,
Yeah. Well, and I mean, it sounds like it's actually pretty simple to start
very,
incorporating things. I mean, what
very,
you just showed me of sitting back on my
very,
desk, like those are simple things.
that's
So
right.
how does diet and exercise fit into that then? Like, is Pilates bad? Like, do you not do that anymore? Is going to the gym bad? Like, would you like have you cut all of that stuff out completely? Like, give me
Yeah,
the
it's almost like you
scoop
can't
for that.
say that food is bad,
Right.
right?
No, because
We
we need
make
to
these
eat.
blanket statements.
Yes,
So
we need to eat.
Pilates, I was trained in 3 different Pilates methods, and I don't have any problems with Pilates other than there's principles that they teach. But it's not just Pilates. You go to yoga and it's like, oh yeah, we treat our core by connecting our ribs to our hips and contracting our abdominals and trying to keep them as rigid as possible. We are in the habit, I don't care if you're a medical doctor, an orthopedic surgeon, we look at this part of the torso and we're like, oh, there's no bones there. It's very weak. It's very fragile. We have to make it solid. There's a design malfunction. Instead of
Mm,
looking at the body and being like, intelligently, I wonder if they didn't put skeletal structure there for a reason. Why is that the only bendy place? Well, because it's supposed to flipping move.
yeah.
So you look at Pilates, you look at yoga, it's literally in every one of our disciplines that you try to connect your ribs to your hips and you hold a solid core by tightening your abs and making them burn as hard as they can. And you want to hold this rigid. And all of a sudden you're like, okay, that's a junk move. Is it, if you take that out, then do your Pilates, just don't do it with that move.
Yeah.
And if you look at Pilates, they love to talk and have this back and forth argument of neutral pelvis and a tuck it's like, those are all positional arguments. The pelvis should be held like this. And you're like, no, the pelvis has to move a million different ways. So we have to refine our sense of like, it's not that one method is bad or good. I can go to a gym. I don't like to do this because I'm not a big fitness person, ironically. I love to move because of how good it feels with fascia.
Yeah.
The same way you love the way the massage felt good in your body. Fascia
Mhm.
feels divine. It's connected to your endorphin system rather than your adrenal system. Okay. So the runner's high that you get after 30 minutes of running, where you
Mhm.
feel elated, that is actually endorphin inducing. And that's what fascia is connected to. And I won't go into the deep science of it. But all of our muscular skeletal workouts are all adrenal based. Those are two opposite things. Fascia and muscles and are doing opposite things. And so if we only do the muscles, then we are taxing and not using the fascia. So I didn't get into fitness. So I could go to the gym and I could be like, oh, I could lift in a way that all of my movement is nutritious. It's all really, really wholesome and organic and just what the body needs. Or I can go to the gym, and if I use the wrong biomechanics, then I am damaging my fascia. If I tuck my pelvis up under myself and keep a low back, this is a chronic thing in our culture. Protect your low back, protect your low back, tuck,
Yeah.
tuck, right? Well, this
Mhm.
posture, when you slam it into your body, is also the posture of slouching all day. The crunch and the slouch are the same toxic element
Mm.
in our bodies. And so what do we need to do is arch. The number one stress reliever on the body is this stuff. Open
Arching
it
your
and
back.
just play. Yeah. It puts you in a
Huh.
parasympathetic response. It triggers your vagus nerve. Anytime you feel
Feeling
stress,
good right now. I'm
that's
arching my
right.
back. Feels
It
great.
feels so good,
It does.
right? Thanks,
Yeah.
Ruth. It's so good.
It
So, I mean,
does.
this is kind of that messaging is that we have to flip it. It's like if you are doing a gym workout, just learn a better biomechanics. Learn better biomechanics. And that's when I get to put on my thing and be like, I don't know anyone else who is doing fascial mechanics like I do it.
So they
That's what
need
I
to
do.
learn from you. Yes, because that's what
Yep.
you do. So, okay, so I want to like obviously people are going to want to follow up with you. So we'll
Yeah.
talk about that in 2 seconds. But
Totally.
what are just like some general like everyday daily fascia maintenance? Like these are the things that are going to be
Good.
good overall. Like, is it
Yep.
drinking more water? Or like, where do we
Well,
go?
no. So yes, I mean, drink water, but you can't actually hydrate through the amount of water you drink. Fascia is an irrigation system. So it actually takes your food and extrapolates the water and then takes it deeper into the cells. It's almost like a slow drip versus the drinking, of a glass of water that just flushes through you.
Interesting.
And so water
Okay.
is good, but you need to think about eating your hydration, and that's high content of hydrating foods. And there's, tons of lists out there. There's a great book that you could read called Quench. I love her work. And she talks about fascia actually in her book. And so that's the diet side, is that fascia is the key. I think that fascia teaches so much wisdom. Okay, it's like the wisdom giver, and I think that they were tapping into this in all the chi of Eastern, acupuncture and Tai Chi, and they're really tapping into the energy movement in the system. And and fascia says moderation in all things, just not too much, not too little, right down the middle. Okay. I don't want too much load, too little load. I don't want too much dieting. I don't want too much workout. I just want like normal, moderation. So, what that looks like in a daily life and in your diet is like, don't do extreme diets. Don't do it. They
Mhm.
don't do that much for you. It doesn't change your physiology that much. And they usually don't work because they're not sustainable, right?
Right.
In order
Right.
for something to be sustainable, it has to be integrated in a really holistic and moderate way. And the same thing for your movement. So when it comes to fascia, yes, you want to focus on hydration. You want to focus on getting vitamin C for collagen production and remodeling in the tissues. You want to focus on having nice folate and good connections in your methylation of different foods. So you could check that. It's not so much what you eat, it's size proportion, like, right? Just little bits at a time rather than massive sizes. Fascia loves all of those kind of moderate things. When it comes to movement, I want to teach your listeners three things that they
Okay.
need to be able to do. And you need to learn. It's actually one move that you're going to then layer into your jungle gym. Okay. One move, but
Okay.
three parts, three steps.
Okay.
Okay. The first one, you're going to walk first thing in the morning. You're going to place your hands on your kitchen sink or on your railing at the top of your staircase. Put your toes close to the baseboard at your sink. Hold on and do this hanging back, like you're water skiing. Let your chest drop. And we need traction like crazy. Traction pulls stress out of the body. It's like siphoning, and it actually pulls the fibers and moves toxins through your system, moves inflammation, and increases the hydraulic nature of fascia and what it's doing. Then drop your butt to the floor and still pull back. Just drop and pull and drop. Are you going to show videos of this? Because so you want to pull
Well, it's
back.
mostly audios.
Okay. And then you want to squat and let your body just fold and
Yeah.
compress as much as possible. And do this 5 times. Pull
Okay.
back and push, and pull back and squat, and pull back and squat. The
Okay.
last thing that you need to do is spiral your spine or rotate your spine. You put your arms out. After you've done 5 of those, stand up, keep your ribs lifted, and just breathe. Inhaling, inhaling, and exhaling 8 times, and move on with your day. The 3 actions, let me repeat them, are compression, pushing the fingers together in the finger toy,
Mhm.
traction, hanging off your sink, and then rotating. For the listener, this is akin to taking a hand washed knit sweater. You dunk it in the water, compression. You pull it out of the water pulls down the fibers, traction. You wring it out to wash the impurities and the toxins out. And every movement in the human body is a compression, a traction, and a wringing out. You can do that in 30 seconds while your car is filling with gas at the gas station. You can do this waiting to pick up your kids on a chain link fence while they're getting out of their soccer practice. You can do this on a fence while you're walking your dog down the street. I do it at Starbucks when I get my coffee. I will go over to the barista. Hold on to the counter, and I do this. You'll see people on my Instagram doing it in airports and doing it
Yeah.
on the Amazon, right? You're looking for trees to hang off of. Your
Yeah.
body needs this vital nutritious movement that moves the water, that moves the stresses in our lives and eliminates them and detoxifies our body. Movement can either be toxic or detoxifying, and you have to learn how to make it more organically what it was intended to be.
That's amazing. It's so simple. Like anybody can do that. So how many
Anybody.
times a day, like for our type A people who are
That's a great
writing this all
question. Yeah.
down,
How many times a
how
day?
many times a day do you have to do this?
Let me tell you something that I want the the listener to hear very clearly. The only way you're ever going to stay with something is not through mental dedication, it's through a feeling. And I want to tell you that the same reflex that we have for thirst, sex, yawning, oxygen, all feed to the same brain, and fascia feeds this need to move. And I want to tell you this because it's not a number, but if you restill this reflex, you don't have to remember it in your head. You'll crave the feeling. You will
Mm,
crave, the reflex will say, get up and arch. Oh my gosh, stretch to the right, to the left, move on. And so you can do it you're supposed to flux your fascia every 45 to 60 minutes. Your body
okay.
should give you the reflex. But in the beginning, your body's reflex is dead. I'm guaranteeing that your fascia is not healthy enough to tell your body, I need this. So
Mhm.
you're going to make a mental note to once an hour, get up, go to the sink, go to your counter. When you go to the bathroom at your work, the stalls, you can hang through like an ape. You can hang and get traction just by grabbing onto the stalls. Look around your life as a jungle gym and do it once an hour for 1 minute. And I guarantee that when you start doing the rotation, the pulling, and the compressing, you're going to start craving the feeling. You don't have any hard time
Yeah.
saying, yes to chocolate cake, right?
Because
Because you
it's the
crave it,
endorphins.
because it's so yummy. So we always try to put our mind over our matter. And fascia
Yeah.
says, don't put your mind over your matter. Make your matter matter. Make your body have an opinion. Listen to what it's telling you. Crave the feelings. And if you excite it, the body will tell you what it needs. You
Yeah.
know, I need a, I have like three cravings. Like I love beets. I love avocados. And I can tell one year I was just like craving folic acid like crazy, or folate. And I'm like, sorry, let me back up that story. I was craving radishes. And I was eating radishes by the handful. And I'm like, why am I eating so many radishes? Well, they're really, really high in folate. And I
Oh,
was working on trying to get pregnant. And my body was like, you need more of this. You need more of
yes.
this. So my really fun thing about fascia is it's a sensory organ. It's collecting all of the information from your body and telling you what you need. You just have to listen. And the bigger picture of that is what we're trying to tell women is like, trust your intuition. Go deep into who you are. Listen to the tensions that are living in your fascia and bring them out, and then learn how to work with them, right? It's a
Yeah.
working with inside of who you are, and that's what's so beautiful about what fascia can do for you.
I love that. I'm excited about this. It's like seriously, my mind is blown right now because it's not something anybody talks about. And that's why okay, everybody needs to know how they can find you, and because you have like online classes, you do
Yeah,
in-person
yeah,
classes and all sorts of stuff. So
yeah.
where can they find you
So
online?
go to GST Body. GST, don't ask what it means. It's another long story. GSTbody.com. You can also find me at Anna Rahe. My last name is spelled weird. Rahe. Anna, Rahe.com. And
Okay.
or on Instagram. Those are the two places. We just keep those two things. And yeah, you can just go and find us there. We have regular live online classes. We have an online studio presence. And then I do courses, and I have to promote. You want to come to my retreat? We're doing a beautiful 4-day retreat in the Rocky Mountains, and in
Ooh,
August. And it's GST really is like this living embodied experience. And so and GST in general is just so deeply connected. So I prefer working with people in person when I can. So that's a really great opportunity to do that.
that sounds amazing. I'm sure it'll
It's
be
really fun.
beautiful too.
Thanks.
Rocky
Yeah.
Mountains.
Working
Getting out of Florida in August wouldn't be so bad.
Come, we would love to have you.
Awesome. Anna,
That's amazing.
this was so good. And we will put all the links to all of that in our show notes as well. So if you're listening to this, you can check out the show notes and get all the links because this is
Mm,
amazing. Like such amazing information. And I'm so excited to start doing my movements, my compressions,
will you please? Yeah. You
what do
can
you
find
call the
you
out
can find
ones?
free, yeah, the contraction,
Contraction,
compression,
compression, and
rotation.
my twist.
Yep.
Yep.
Traction, compression, and rotation are
I
the
got it.
really key elements. And just keep your ribs lifted when
Okay.
you're doing those things. Keep them up and almost like you're in an arch because it feels,
Arch,
yeah.
arch the back.
I want to
Got
say thanks for letting me just share because I feel like it's so powerful and potent to people. So I really appreciate you,
it.
having this
Oh,
conversation.
you're so welcome. Thank you so much for being here today.
Yeah, it's great.
All right, guys, that about does it for this episode. I hope that you found this topic as interesting as I did because I loved it. And if you know someone else who might be interested, please be sure to send it their way. Then be sure to subscribe to the podcast to be notified of future episodes. And I will see you back here for another new episode very soon.